4 years later. 4 years later. It's been a long time since I've had to say this, but I am Rob138. And this is my buddy, Pop Stank. We are the Man-Made Monstercast. Welcome
How's
back,
everybody
pal.
doing? Exhausted, but good to be here.
Yeah, I got that, man. I got that. So today, for the viewers on YouTube, you can see that we're doing Candyman, the OG Candyman.
Yes,
Almost not the OG Candyman. Up until the
slight
13th
confusion.
hour. Up until the 13th hour, I had planned for OG Candyman based on my partner here. He texted me and said, Candyman, period, Halloween, period, something, was it something classic, he said?
Yeah,
Question mark. And I'm like, Candyman it is, because I've been wanting to
I meant
rewatch it.
something. I meant something a little different in my head. It meant it worked, and apparently
Right.
there was a miscommunication. And I had 30 some pages of facts that I was perusing through for the new one, and Rob's like, "No, we're doing
Yeah. Well, it was a little more than that. We had a bit of a chat, and then I was like, wait a minute. Oh, boy. I didn't silence my phone. That's not good. Um, I was like, oh, wait. You want to do the new one? I don't want to do the new one. I love the new one. Don't get me wrong,
OG."
and I'm sure we'll reference it as we're going through this. But I
Got
definitely
a few
want to do
things
the
on it.
OG one. So we're here to do that.
All right.
So man, it's weird. I don't even remember how to start this. So I guess we'll start with the facts, man.
Yeah.
What do you got for me?
Theatrical release was October 16th, 1992, on a budget of approximately 6 mil, and it looks like they grossed 25.7 mil.
Fantastic.
So, not too bad,
Fantastic.
especially for back then.
Now was it the 16th? Because when I pulled it up, it said it was the 18th. So I'm
Really,
confused. Yeah.
we'll have to fact check that. I had
Yeah.
the 16th.
Either way, it's 2 days difference. I only asked because it was the 18th. It's the weekend of my birthday, so that's pretty
That's fair.
cool.
It was made by English filmmaker Bernard Rose,
hmm hmm
and he got his start by actually working as a gopher on the Muppet Show.
Nice.
Didn't know if you knew that.
I
Yeah,
did
so
not know that.
it's kind of funny. A lot of good horror and metal people got their start in some weird ass shows.
Well, Rob Zombie with Pee Wee's Playhouse.
Exactly.
So speaking of the director, in
Hmm.
my research, I had learned that apparently, and speaking of Rob Zombie as well, apparently his wife was originally supposed to play the lead, and Virginia Madsen was supposed to play the Bernadette character.
Yep. And so the initial story of the Forbidden was set in London, which when it was actually Bernard Rose's wife who found the story, loved the story, and went to her husband, and they both approached Clive Barker about turning it into a feature film. The film was initially, I guess, supposed to be in London, but then they decided it would be better to transpose it to Chicago for more modern, you know, social, political, ethical
Sure,
reasons.
sure.
And they had some ideas that they approached Clive. Clive was very on board. He actually really loved everything. His wife was actually supposed to play the character, and last minute she got pregnant.
Oh,
So, yep, Virginia Madsen was supposed to be
Bernadette.
yeah, Bernadette's character. Which, when they moved it to Chicago, they felt that they should create the Bernadette character as African American to fit the film a little bit more. And Virginia Madsen moved into that role, but only because Bernard Rose's wife asked her to, because they were actually friends, and
Mm.
she didn't want to step into the role because she didn't want to step on her toes, but she gave her the blessing and said, "I only want you to play the character." And I
Mm.
thought that was kind of cool,
See, weirdly,
and
not to cut you off, but weirdly, I
mhm,
also found some information. I don't know how true it is because I couldn't
mhm.
verify it, but I don't know if you found anything in your research that they were going to offer the part to Sandra Bullock as well.
That's what actually I was getting ready to say was if Helen didn't step into the role, Sandra Bullock was going to be the next option. Which at that point it was 2 years before Speed, so
Mhm.
she was really a relative nobody.
Right, because she
So
blew
that
up with Speed.
exactly.
Great flick, by
So
the
I
way.
thought that was really cool. And then if we're going to go into that, somebody else who was actually up to play Candyman was actually Eddie Murphy.
Yes, Yes.
It's rumor, it's not confirmed, but they think that, or the rumor states that it's possibly because of his height and his payment requirements was why he didn't actually get the role.
I heard it
Tony
was
Todd
the
is actually
I heard it was the pay.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, and two, it makes sense because I mean Eddie Murphy's 5'9" versus Tony Todd's 6'5".
Hmm.
So if they want a more imposing character, and I think they made the right choice. I love Eddie Murphy, but especially at the time, being that Tony Todd was more relatively unknown, I think it was a good choice.
Well, there's always something to be said when you have these, and not that this was going to become an iconic role; it became an iconic role. But when
Oh,
you
of course.
have these, I don't want to say no-name actors, but I don't mean that in an offensive way. But the actors that people aren't terribly familiar with, that come into these roles and then they embody the part, it makes it feel more real. But getting back to the Eddie Murphy thing, there's a certain irony with that because obviously there's a lot of parallels here with Candyman and
Mm,
Dracula, and even so
exactly.
much as Tony Todd went so far as to say that he wanted to create his own Phantom of the Opera. So there's a lot of
Yep.
gothic horror romance thing going on here, and
Oh yeah.
the irony of Eddie Murphy doing Vampire in Brooklyn is not lost on me after
Well,
all of
it's
this. So
actually, you know what? Yeah, I didn't even think about that. And that is really funny.
yeah,
But it's funny because I got a quote here from Bernard Rose
sure.
stating that the idea was always that Candyman was a romantic figure, a romantic in the sort of Edgar Allan Poe sense. It's the romance of death. He's a ghost, and he's also the resurrection of something that is kind of unspoken and unspeakable in American history, which is slavery. As well, he's kind of come back and he's haunting with the new version of racial segregation in Chicago. So this is still part of this quote. And I think there's something very seductive and sweet, very romantic about him. And that's what makes him interesting. The same way there is about Dracula. In the end, the boogeyman is someone you surrender to. You're not just afraid of, there's a certain kind of joy in his seduction. And Tony was always so romantic. Tony ties, pardon me, Tony ties him in so elegantly and is such a gentleman. He is wonderful. So that was always the intention of the director too. And the fact that he said Tony played it exactly how he wanted, that goes without saying. I love Eddie Murphy, but I don't think he could have pulled that to that degree
Right.
in such a serious way.
I mean,
Something
and
about
Eddie
that.
Murphy has got some chops, dude. Like,
Yes, he does.
especially his later stuff.
Mhm.
I my first experience with not we're gonna go off a tangent here with Eddie Murphy, but my first experience with Eddie Murphy was Raw. As a
Okay.
child, I saw that stand up, so that's where my folks were at. But
It explains a lot with you.
doesn't it? But yeah, no, even when it like, and you see this a lot with actors as they get into, I'm gonna say,
Mhm.
the twilight of their careers, but let's call it what it is. They get towards the end of their careers and they start doing a lot more like out of their wheelhouse kind of things. I mean, Jim Carrey's done it,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, where they I
Adam
don't want to call
Sandler.
them art house films, but they do a lot more that requires which
Mhm.
other things they haven't shown in their repertoire. They've been
Exactly.
very typecast their careers because that's what their careers. That's where good more power to them. That's where they made their money. But
Of course.
anyways, I'm losing my point. But
It's
let's get back on track here.
yeah. So here's a few things though. At the time, there were a lot of groundbreaking, you know, bullet points in this film. There were a lot of groundbreaking special effects in this film. But one of the things that actually stood out to me was the opening title screen actually was the first film to use what they call a skycam. And it can shoot up to a 500 millimeter lens with no vibration. And that's how they had such a smooth shot across the highway going into Chicago.
Yeah, that was I actually had that down here too.
Hmm.
That's was most often used with sports, with like
Hmm.
football and whatnot. And Candyman was the first motion picture that proved that you could use that with film and it could work.
Yep.
So,
That's
but
really, really cool.
you'll see as we start getting into talking about the movie, um, that they definitely take advantage of it. They use it a
Hmm.
fucking lot. Like more than like I had originally noticed upon like my first viewing and all the other viewings that I've had of this movie because we watch movies
Right.
differently when we're doing them for the
Right.
podcast. We
Well,
watch them a little more cynically, a little more ironically because we
right.
gotta entertain the people, Mark. You gotta
Well, and
entertain the
that's
people.
and it's funny because like I had a discussion with Megan about this the other night. A lot of people are trying to recreate that sky cam, that shining shot,
Hmm.
going up the mountain. It's so easy now because drones are so available.
Right.
and they have 4K cameras. It was set with stability options, and like we use them at my work. I work for Komatsu, a construction and mining company, and for our GPS systems in our machines, we freaking use drones with cameras on them so we can map things. Like it's funny how available they are. So even if you look at my and Kevin Kangus's films, Territory 1 and 2, there's a lot of drone shots in those films because it's just easy and it makes for higher production value. But back then, you needed a helicopter, you needed
Right.
this big rig, this
Mhm.
special stuff. So now, what is common, and honestly, I feel overused, used to be like, wow, I can't believe they did this. Now it's just part of the shooting.
Well, yeah, it's like you mentioned that on our little chit chat that we posted. Um, was it last week? Which, by the way, you can find that on Apple and Stitcher and Spotify and Amazon now. Same as this. But you mentioned
We're
that.
official.
We are official. um, but you mentioned that in that conversation about how, when The Shining did that overhead shot, it was
Mm,
helicopters. Now Archive 81 does it. And it's just as simple as ordering a friggin' drone on Amazon and
yeah.
done. But getting back to Candyman, you had mentioned how the film actually tackles the racial tensions in Chicago,
Hmm.
especially in the 90s. And I mean, you could argue very prevalent today as well. Um,
Oh yeah.
that
It's
being
probably
said,
more prevalent today.
yeah. That being said, with respect to the Forbidden, that's one of the big changes. In the Forbidden definitely tackles the societal structures in Liverpool. Um, however,
Sorry, my daughter just came upstairs. I apologize.
you're fine. Um, one of the things that I think made Candyman so special is the backstory. And granted, we don't know the character's name is Daniel Robitaille yet. That comes in the sequel. But the
Correct.
backstory of the Candyman himself, Tony Todd created that.
That was all him with when he was rehearsing with Virginia Madsen, and I give him credit for that. Like he really put his all into creating that character. I had a note somewhere. He actually gave him a different name before eventually what Daniel Robitaille was going to be.
Hmm.
I can't seem to find it. I will try to find it though.
Well, we'll get into it. Let's talk about the movie here, man. So I'm just gonna do like we used to, and it sucks because you can't see me. So hopefully we don't start walking on each other here. But
So real
let's.
quick, I found it. He actually named the character Granville T. Candyman.
What was his name?
Granville T. Candyman is what Tony Todd initially named the character when
He
he had
gave
no
the
name.
Candyman the last name of Candyman.
Correct.
Hmm. Okay. Um, no offense to Tony Todd, he's an absolute sweetheart. We've met him numerous times.
Oh yeah,
Um, absolute
huge human
sweetheart,
being.
gentle giant. Glad they stuck with Daniel Robitaille from the sequel because not a fan of Granville T. Maybe it's Candyman or Candyman or Candyman. Like maybe
I think
there's
you're reaching
like an
for straws
inflection
now.
somewhere, make it exotic. I don't know.
I think you're
Anyways,
reaching for straws.
let's get into the movie here. So we open with an overhead shot of Chicago, the Chicago traffic, which
Hmm.
again from the sky cam. And my first thought, my first note here is Philip Glass fucking rules.
Hmm.
Philip Glass fucking rules, and I think that's going to be a theme. I've got all these notes about as I was watching the movie. And I think I typed that about 27 times. Philip
I'm
Glass
glad you did
fucking
because I
rules.
actually I kind of deleted most of my facts with him because I figured you were going to tackle it because I know you are a big score guy. But
Believe it or not,
after re
I didn't.
hmm? Huh? But okay, well then fine. We'll just say it. Apparently, he was actually very disappointed with the film, and he felt roped into something that he wasn't expecting.
Oh wow.
But he's actually happy now. Fast forward, 20, 30 years because he's still getting paychecks.
Well, yeah,
So,
it's like I would argue it's one of the most iconic scores in horror.
hmm no, it's beautiful.
Yes, it is incredible, but wow, that actually blows my mind. So anyway, we
I
transition. Go ahead. What?
was laughing.
Oh, we transition to some bees and this awesome narration from Tony Todd, where he ends with "What is blood for, if not for shedding?" A ton of bees fly into the air in Chicago, and at this point, I kind of wonder to myself: is there a bee pandemic that Chicago did not know about? Because that's a shitload of bees.
Well,
So
and I hate to cut you off real quick. A note on that shot when the bees hit the camera, that was a mixture of visual and practical effects. They actually used the little bee vacuum that they were taking all the bees off the actor safely with, and reversing it and shooting the bees at the camera. And then he used practical or digital effects at the time to expand it and make it look like more bees.
Huh. See, kids, this is why he's the effects guy. This is why. I just watch the movie and write it down and have little quips. I'm the comedy guy. He's the smart one. So Candyman finishes his narration, and we cut to a shot when Helen, played by the lovely Virginia Madsen, she's smoking. She's being told a story about a babysitter and biker bad boy Ted Raimi.
Yes, one of the cameos.
Who would have thought that Ted friggin' Raimi, of all people, would be playing like this badass, like biker, like hunk stud guy? Like, I'm sorry. No, I've seen Ted Raimi in too many things. I was just watching Man with the Screaming Brain the other night. Like, I can't see Ted Raimi as anything but a goofball.
No, yeah. Even in person, if you've ever met him, he can be a dick in person, but
I mean,
even in person, he's.
I said most of us can.
Well, yeah. But yeah, even in person, he tends to be very goofy. So it was kind of funny. But
yeah, it's one of his. I don't want to call it early cameos because I mean, Evil Dead.
yeah,
He did a lot of stuff, but I digress. So anyway, they're gonna bone, but the babysitter tells them that the story of Candyman, as I guess it's some weird kind of foreplay. I'm not even sure.
it was a little odd, but
So
teach their own. I don't judge.
Ted Raimi's like rubbing up and down this chick in the mirror, and he says Candyman 4 times. She tells him no one's ever gotten past 4, and then she tells him to go downstairs. She says Candyman the 5th time. The lights turn out, she gets murdered. So this is where I start, and we're right at the beginning of the movie. I gotta question the rules here. So I gotta ask, can anyone say Candyman in the mirror so long as it's 5 times? Are those the rules? It was always my understanding that a person had to say it 5 times. Like, can me and a barbershop quartet stand in front of a mirror and sing Candyman in harmony 1 time, and he'll appear? Like, technically, it got said 5 times in the mirror, but it was by 5 different people.
Let's just go with yes.
I mean, could you imagine
Well,
like that's a musical horror comedy I'd want to watch, like me and a barbershop quartet just Candyman. Yeah.
well,
So,
initially it was supposed to be 13 times. Could you imagine?
are you shitting me?
No, apparently it was supposed to be 13 times and they moved it to 5.
God, I feel like this movie is long to begin with. Could you imagine if they all had to say it 13 times? Anyway, a blood stain appears in the ceiling, and then apparently Ted Raimi goes crazy. That's the end of the story there. So Helen heads to a different classroom where a classmate, Bernadette, is interviewing what appears to be Freddy from Scooby Doo. Yeah. So what do we got for Bernadette, man?
Uh, I have a lot of notes. I apologize.
No, you're good, man. You're good. Hey, it's our first time back. It's gonna take us a minute to get into the feng shui, as it were.
Fix it in post. Fix it in post.
Oh, there's no post for this, baby. This is going straight up.
So the actress was Cassie Lemons,
Mm-hmm.
and she actually previously appeared in Vampire's Kiss, and she is best known for appearing alongside Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
But again, she was the second for the Bernadette characters. Initially, Virginia Madsen was actually supposed to be Bernadette. She got out of acting and actually became a director and became a pretty prolific director. And she also was a mentor for DaCosta, not on the remake, but on a film before the remake. So there's a little bit of a connection between the original and the new one.
Wow. I did not know that. I did not. Again, this is why he's the smart one and I'm the guy with the gags, So, we cut to an overhead shot, another beautiful overhead shot of the University of Chicago, the pavilion. Excuse me, allergies. With a voiceover about urban legends from Helen's husband, Trevor. It ends with, ain't no goddamn alligators in the sewers, yo. That's not how it's said, but that's how I wrote it, because there ain't no alligators in the sewer. The importance of this scene is we meet Stacy, who's kind of flirty with Trevor. Helen picks up on this too. She says she couldn't even look her in the eye. Trevor makes light of it, and then veers off on why. And then they veer off to why he's doing an urban legends lecture since they're working on the same topic for their thesis. So from there, Helen's listening to the interview, and it explicitly states at this point, if you look in the mirror and say his name 5 times, he'll appear behind you. So did the babysitter say it 4 times before Ted Raimi came over, and then said it the 5th time once he went downstairs? I have to know the actual rules to this. What
What happens if you speak in between? Does that break
is
the
there
chain?
a pause rule? I don't understand the rules. Like the movie's just started. I think we're maybe 20 minutes in, if that. I don't mean I'm not trying to shit on Candyman. I love it, but it's just one of those things that I never picked up on until this playthrough, and I'm like, huh, okay. So anyway, housekeeping comes in to clean the
Housekeeping?
classroom. What?
You need to flush your pillow?
Oh, nice, Family Guy, very good. Housekeeping comes in to clean the classroom, and they hear the interview that Helen is
Tommy
listening.
boy.
It is
Tommy boy.
huh?
No,
I suck.
we need more lemon, please. That would be Family Guy.
Yeah, sorry. Let me get through
Disappointing.
this. Jesus, housekeeping comes in to clean the classroom, and they hear the interview tape that Helen's listened to, and they tell her that the Candyman lives in Cabrini Green and that her friend knows all about it. Helen asks if she can talk to her friend, and the housekeeping lady obliges. Helen sets up a recorder. She's told about Ruthie Jean. She called the cops
Hmm.
after hearing banging and said someone was coming through her walls. No one believed her. She was apparently killed with a hook. "Quote unquote, Candyman killed her."
So here is something on that. The Ruthie Green character, that was a name, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was actually based on a real Chicago murder. Called the news article was called "They Came Through the Bathroom Mirror and Cause of Death" by journalist Steve Bogira. It was in 1987. A woman named Ruthie Mae McCoy lived in Chicago's Abbott Homes housing project, called 911 reporting a break-in. Because the call was misfiled as a disturbance with a neighbor, the police did not arrive until 2 more calls by the other neighbors had been reported. McCoy was tragically killed by an intruder who entered through the bathroom through an opening behind the medicine cabinet, just like in the film. So that actually was a real thing. Those projects were built where the apartments were connected.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting, and they kept the name Ruthie as an homage slash to keep it kind of based in reality.
Right, and I think they tore down Cabrini Green. I want to say in 1999.
It was I got that one too. It was torn down. The high rises were controversially and famously demolished in 2011. Now a Target stands in its place. But the Cabrini Roadhouses, which are featured in the DaCosta sequel, are still remain. So that is all still there. But the actual projects were torn down. Yeah, that's what I got.
Say a Target is there now?
Yeah, they built a Target over what used to be Cabrini Green.
I'm surprised it's not a Walmart. Consumerism at its finest, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm.
So we cut to a newspaper clippings projector montage, and it's funny because everything's gone digital media. We don't get these anymore in movies, and I kind of miss them because they're just always a really great visual.
Mm.
It's one of those things where I saw it when I was watching the film yesterday, and I was like, oh, newspapers, man. Nobody does print really anymore. So
They still
Helen
come
takes
every week here.
what's up, bud?
They still come to my house every week.
Well, Helen takes the clippings to Bernadette, who thinks this is sick because it's reality and not an urban legend. Helen shows her 2 different clippings showing that it's not Cabrini Green in the photo. It's actually her building, and states that her apartment was built as a housing project. She proceeds to take her medicine cabinet, plus mirror off the wall in the bathroom, and shows that there's no wall between the apartments. You can just pop the medicine cabinet out and get through to the next apartment. I feel like this is Death Star levels of shitty design flaws.
But it was real, so
I know
yes.
that's like awful. I didn't know it was real until you just told me. So
Yeah.
they put the mirror back in and do the whole Candyman shtick since they don't believe in it. So here's the thing: only Helen says it 5 times.
Yeah.
Bernadette says it 4 times. But since they were together and they said it a total of 9 times, should they both be killed? What are the rules? Does he only kill one for every 5 times it's said, or does he kill everybody who's in the mirror if it's said at minimum 5 times?
Maybe he kills her 4/5 of the time.
Well, I mean,
Bad joke. I'm sorry.
I think I get to it later in my little thing here. when spoilers, he does eventually kill Bernadette. Did she say it in the mirror one more time between now and then for that to happen?
And was it 4/5 part of the movie? That far into the movie?
It may have been. It's meta. We're bringing it back.
Yeah, I haven't heard that in a while.
Anyway, Helen's in bed. Cue Trevor in a jump scare. He's drunk, and Helen looks worried. And that's that scene. We go to another overhead shot. There's a lot of these in here. This is where I start notating that. Helen and Bernadette dress like cops. They straight up do. And go to
Hmm.
Cabrini Green. Bernadette is basically like, what the fuck is wrong with you? This is gang territory. They argue about whether they should go, and they decide to because Trevor and Archie? I thought she said Archie.
I didn't catch that.
Would chicken out. But if she did say Archie, we're never introduced to Archie.
Mm.
Unless the Purcell character is meant to be Archie. I don't know. So then we get another overhead shot. They're really making use of the sky cam, because I imagine it was pretty expensive.
Oh,
There's
sure.
some. Go.
No, I
Oh.
just said I'm sure. I was agreeing with you.
There are some dudes watching them get out of the car, question them. They tell them they can't come in to the building. They ask if they're police. They follow them. They yell up the stairs. 5-0 are coming up. Helen reassures Bernadette that it's okay because they think they're cops.
So, got a little thing on that one. Was a lot of the extras in that scene were actual residents and gang members from the Chicago and Cabrini Green area. They actually had to pay rival gangs not to have like turf battles while they were filming, and one of the ways that they could actually use Cabrini was by allowing them to be in the film. Thought that was kind of cool. When they were scouting the area, plainclothes police officers actually escorted Tony Todd and Virginia Madsen through the Cabrini Green projects so they could get familiar with the area.
Yeah, I remember reading that they had to have police on staff for when they were filming
Hmm.
as well. So,
That too. And apparently, so I got two different stories with it, but apparently a stray bullet either hit one of the production vans or a generator at one point.
Jesus. I mean,
Yeah, but that,
Chicago, brother.
mhm. I mean, look where we live.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I think I got a buddy in Chicago, my boy Buko, CM Dub, what's up? Um, we always have a contest, and we go back and forth every year about who's going to higher murder rate, like who's in the lead, Chicago or Baltimore. I think we won last year. I don't know
We
if you call
win.
that winning, but
We win almost every year because I always stay up on the
the
crime. I
murder
don't know
rate
why.
in our town.
Murder rate and crime, and Baltimore usually sits anywhere between third and fifth in the nation. Um, Believe it or not, a lot of times higher than Detroit, higher than New York City. St. Louis, Missouri is almost always number one, which is just the oddest thing.
Well, third or fifth, we got to pump those numbers, brother. Actually,
And I'm good.
let's not do that.
Yeah, that's not.
I don't condone murder in any level. So we get our first shot of the "Sweets to the Sweet" graffiti on the wall, and this
Hmm.
graffiti is prevalent in the stories. Going
Hmm.
back to the Forbidden, where Helen's character is actually studying graffiti, I think they tried to do that a bit with this, to where she takes a lot of the photos of the graffiti of Cabrini Green and whatnot, even though they're technically working on a thesis about urban legends. So I really appreciated that that's one of the things that translated from the Clive Barker short story
Hmm.
over
And also,
to the actual motion picture. Maybe not directly, but still, the flavor of it is there.
Sweets to the Sweets and his Growing the Gullet are both Shakespearean references.
Really?
Growing the Gullet was a play on From Knave to the Chaps from Macbeth, and I had what Sweets to the Sweets was, but I can't find that right now. But yeah, they were both actually references to Shakespeare.
Wow. That actually does not surprise me. And I'm sure, let's just say this here, we're going to probably, most definitely, do an episode on Clive Barker one day. The
Oh, yeah.
guy's awesome. So Helen's taking pictures of the graffiti. We get a jump scare where a door opens and a big ass dog starts barking at them. They make it to Ruthie Jean's abandoned apartment. Helen says the layout's identical to hers, so she goes to the bathroom, check the mirror, medicine cabinet thing. Bernadette doesn't really want to be there at this point. They find a hole where the killer crawled through. Helen takes some pictures and crawls through herself. Helen's taking pictures of the derelict apartment. I gotta wonder at this point what this actually does for their thesis. Just taking pictures of this murder like crime scene. So Helen crawls through another hole in a wall, which turns out to be an agape mouth of some graffiti that's supposed to be the Candyman. There's a pile of candy with razor blades, and then that Helen finds, and then we get a jump scare of Helen popping her head through the window. Helen ran out of film. LOL. And she wants to go back. Bernadette says no. So I don't know if I just missed it or I've just missed it every time I've watched this movie. What is the significance of the candy with the razor blades in it when it comes to the lore of the Candyman?
I didn't think it. I didn't find anything on it. I just assumed it was more visual,
Hmm.
and the fact that a lot of the candy, like, because so here's a little thing was that uh, Clive Barker actually got confronted by a number of academics who accused him of taking advantage of using African American urban legends, when in fact he created the story of the Candyman. Well, the Candyman in the London version. However, the urban legend holds and hits so well that a lot of people for the longest time thought it was a real urban legend. So a lot of the times, like if I've ever heard of like the Candyman or any type of things like that, it always goes back to the Halloween thing of razor blades and candy bars and things like that. And I just wonder if it was kind of a play on that. This is just me assuming. I couldn't, like I said, find anything on it specifically though.
Well, I know that. So there was a real life Candyman. There was actually a
Correct.
real life. I don't know if he actually counts as a serial killer, but a real life pedophile and killer,
Yep.
that, whose family owned like a candy factory or something of the sorts. Now,
Correct.
this movie has nothing to do with that, but that's the only link that I could think to connect. But I also want to point
Mm,
out that Candyman 2021 actually did more to explain the candy and the razor blades than any of the
exactly.
three prior Candyman movies did.
Mm,
I really love that 2021 expanded on that. Um, so, Anne Marie is the chick who had the giant dog. So she's back out with her huge ass dog, and she questions why they're there. They want to talk to her, but she has to tend to her baby. They follow her, and Helen reassures her that she doesn't want to cause a problem. Anne Marie wants to know what they're studying. Studying that they're bad, that they steal, that they gang bang, that they're all on drugs. She says they're not all like the assholes downstairs, and she just wants to raise her son, Anthony. Anne Marie says she didn't mean to be rude, but typically the white people who come around Cabrini Green aren't the handshaking type.
mm.
She asks if they want to know about Ruthie Jean. Anne Marie, excuse me. Anne Marie said that she heard everything through the walls, and even she called 911, but no one came. She says she's scared that they'll never catch him. Catch who? Catch the Candyman. So then we cut to Parcell. Purcell, I'm sorry, Purcell, who I don't know if Purcell's Archie or not, but Purcell. Um, he wants to review the data that Helen and Bernadette have, but Helen declines. Purcell takes a cheap shot, and basically Helen shits all over him. Bernadette mentions Cabrini Green, and Purcell says he wrote a story about Cabrini Green and the Candyman 10 years ago, and laughs at Helen. She laughs at Helen when she says she doesn't know the story.
Oh yeah, so
Purcell,
that is Archie, by the way. I do have a note on that.
he is Archie?
Yeah, so Bernard Rose is actually Archie. That is him in that scene. He plays the university researcher.
Huh.
So
How
there you
about
go.
that?
I felt something clicked when you started talking about that scene, and I was like, oh, wait a minute,
Well,
and I
because
found it.
all the information I tried to pull up just had him credited as Purcell with no first name. So I'm like, who the fuck is Archie?
Yeah, yep. So that's Archie, and he's the really stuck-up university teacher.
So,
So that's your two major cameos in the film, Ted Raimi and him.
nice. So Purcell gives us the exposition as to Candyman's origins, how he became the portrait painter. Candyman was hired to paint the portrait of a rich man's daughter, a rich white man's daughter. That's important. They fell in love. She became pregnant. He tells her that Candyman was chased to Cabrini Green because her father, found out and hired basically a lynch mob. They sawed off his hand, smeared him with honey, and let bees sting him to death before they burned him alive and scattered his ashes all over Cabrini Green. And again, this is all Tony Todd.
Right.
This whole story is Tony Todd, and I think it's awesome because that is a great
Yep.
origin story.
Very tragic, very brutal. It gives a lot of reasoning for the character to do what he does.
Yeah, it's incredibly tragic, and I think the best
Hmm.
the best heroes and villains in cinema and in literature are the tragic hero, the tragic villain, and the story itself, because it hits on like a real level, adds a certain
Hmm.
gravitas to where, you know, do you root for Candyman? Do you? And I think again, 2021 played to that.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I cannot. I know you wanted to do 2021. I absolutely adored the Candyman 2021 movie. Absolutely
Oh
adored
yeah.
it. I love that it played to the strengths that the original set up,
Hmm.
and even filled in some gaps there. But you know, we
Oh,
will talk
and
about 2021. I'm sure in a different episode.
yes, yes, I definitely want to cover it eventually, just because I wanted to see it in theaters with everything going on in the world the way it was. We just
Sure.
and us having the three kids, it just wasn't possible. And I kept hearing reviews from friends that I respect, friends that I just look at and go, "You're an idiot." And it was very wide spectrum. Either had you're going to love it or you're going to hate it. And the people that told me I was going to hate it, the reasonings they gave, I'm just looking at like I thought I knew you. Like
Right.
reading to that what you will. It's like you're really that closed minded.
Yeah.
I'm really wanting to see this movie now. And honestly, my wife and I put it on one night. We bought it the day it came out, and I was blown away. Like, is it a perfect movie? No, there really aren't many, if any at all. But it was just one of those things where I was just watching it and going, "Holy shit, this is the kind of sequel 20, 30 years later that you hope to see."
Right.
Versus, a Dumb and Dumber 2 and things like that, which I thought was hilarious, but you lost the magic of the original film. This did not. And I think that's what really set me off with the new film.
Yeah, I would argue it added to the
Hmm.
mastery and the magic of the original. Um, so we cut back to Helen in her apartment. She meets, I'm sorry, Helen in the apartment, Anne Marie's apartment. She meets this little kid named Jake. He says Anne Marie isn't there when Helen knocks. Another huge dog jump scare because we haven't had enough of those already. Helen asks Jake about Ruthie, and Jake says he doesn't know anything. I mean, this is street code, man. I grew up in Baltimore, like in the city, in the shitty parts. This is street code,
Right.
like, and Helen, entitled college, kid coming in here doesn't know shit about anything. So Helen tries to tell him it's okay because she's not a cop. That doesn't make it okay. Snitches get stitches. We all know that.
Hmm.
Um, so he says Candyman will get him if he talks, and she's crazy for being there. She tells him that
Right.
she's not scared, that Jake doesn't have to say anything. He can just show her where Candyman is unless he's scared. And I have here, this is some manipulative bullshit. This chick is in the ghetto, disrupting everyone's shit for her thesis. She's got no respect for the street code of conduct and thinks she can just come in and put all these people at risk.
Hmm.
It's entitlement 101.
Well, and she gets hers. So
We'll get there.
that's what I'm saying. But, she gets hers. And it's kind of tit for tat at that point.
Yeah. Anyway, Jake takes her to the public restrooms where they pass a big bonfire being built for the quote unquote party. Jake says a boy got killed in the bathroom. His mom was in the store across the street. He needed to use the bathroom. Um, the mom heard him screaming. He said it's a big tough guy went in and came out with white hair and
Hmm.
says basically the kid got castrated. And he says, can't fix that, better off dead.
Yep.
So, speaking of Helen and getting hers, this is exactly word for word what I wrote here. Helen's dumbass goes into the bathrooms for reasons. Note, Sweets the Sweet looks like it's written in shit on the walls here. She's gagging, she's choking, she opens the stalls. There's an arrow pointing down to a toilet, which is full of bees.
Hmm.
Outside, the quote unquote Candyman approaches Jake and then goes into the bathroom. And we get the infamous, we hear you're looking for
Looking
the
for the Candyman,
Candyman,
bitch.
bitch.
So,
Helen, God,
cool thing about the bees. Cool thing about the bees in the toilet. Again, one of the things they wanted to do was make sure that these bees weren't injured on set.
mhm,
So they actually put a queen bee in the bottom of the toilet, so the pheromones would come up, and that's what kept the bees down into the toilet. But to keep the bees from around the area of the toilet seat of getting potentially crushed and whatnot, actually used Vaseline, so they couldn't climb up, which is what helped keep them in. Because all these bees were only 12-hour old, um, basically babies, because they were safer to deal with because there was less chance of getting stung.
right. And it's
Yeah, so they were bred specifically for the film.
it's funny, the bee wrangler is actually the person responsible for murdering Macaulay Culkin in My Girl. Same bee wrangler. Um, So, anyways, we hear you're looking for the Candyman, bitch. Helen tries to talk her way through this, and that shit just does not work.
Yep.
This is what happens when you go fucking around with shit that you shouldn't fuck with. Period.
She gets a little beat down.
Yeah. So, let's see here. We cut to the lineup scene. And I just need to say that this scene has been one of the most inadvertently funny things to me for a long, long time. I don't know how this whole thing started, but we hear you're looking for the Candyman bitch thing became a gag between me and our old buddy JR. And then it
Yep,
spread to
and me.
you, and then it spread
Yeah.
to like Matt and everybody. And I think it's just how the lines were delivered and the fact that we were total idiots then because we were like in our early 20s. I vividly recall at band practices when because me and JR used to be in a band together. If I was looking for something or he was looking for something, and somebody would say, "What are you looking for?" And one of us would yell, "Well, here you're looking for the Candyman, bitch."
Yep.
So, anyway, Helen IDs the guy. She has a huge shiner as a receipt for don't go snooping around. Not that I think that anybody should ever hit a woman. Let me just clarify that shit right now. But you also shouldn't fuck with shit that you shouldn't fuck with.
No. And that was more than the shiner, dude. I don't know how she healed so fast, considering it looked like she had a golf ball on the side of her eye.
Yeah. I'll mention that briefly. The detective says that all of Cabrini Green is locked down, and says that the quote-unquote Candyman ran the overlords, and he killed Ruthie and the kid. They said they could never get him before because they didn't have anybody to testify. Helen asked about Jake. She goes to talk to him. Jake gives her a bunch of shit for being a liar, which, justifiably. And turning her back on their secret, he says Candyman will get him. Helen tries to tell him Candyman isn't real. So we cut to Trevor getting home. Helen's greeting him. And I guess this is a time jump because Helen is healed up rather nicely. Um, so Trevor's acting strangely in this scene. We get another overhead shot. Bernadette meets Helen. Helen laments that it's ridiculous that the two people get brutally murdered at Cabrini and nothing happens, but a white woman gets attacked and the whole place gets locked down. Unfortunately, this is a commentary on society then and today. It's unfortunate, and I agree, 100% that is terrible. Bernadette saved the pictures, says there's interest in their thesis since she made the local section of the newspaper. Again, newspapers, we have print. Helen thinks they'll be published. Now, we get the real Candyman.
Which is funny because he actually is not seen for 44 minutes into the film. Let me rephrase that. He is seen eventually 44 minutes into the film.
Yes.
And then a little thing that I had read, I know we weren't going to go too far into the social commentary, but one of the big themes there was that it wasn't, the cops stated they knew who the Candyman was. And it wasn't until Virginia Madsen's character, a white woman, actually gets attacked that they are willing to take action.
Yeah, that's what I just mentioned.
Okay, well, that I apologize. My daughter was up here.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I mean, we can discuss that. That's horrifying because that was the case then, and one can argue that is the fucking case today.
Yeah,
and it's sickening.
And that was the thing that I really liked about this film was they didn't shove it in your face, but they did it in a way that makes you go, you think, and you go, holy shit, it makes you feel. And I think that's the thing that made Candyman, especially at the time, stand out with a lot of quote unquote slasher films was how intelligent it was.
Right.
A lot of slashers at that point were just that, comedic driven, gore fests, where this really, really tackled a lot of stuff. And if you don't walk away from this film feeling something, then you have no soul.
No, there's a lot to unpack here before we move on. I would argue, because I've never ever considered Candyman a slasher movie. I feel it's more of a supernatural, almost gothic romance in the vein of Dracula, like we mentioned earlier.
Definitely is, but it almost always falls in the slasher category.
Right, because of the times. In the 90s, exactly. Everything was, in the late 80s, everything was a freaking slasher movie. But I want to get back to, you had an earlier comment about 2021 Candyman.
Mm-hmm.
and you had people running the spectrum of what they thought of it and the idea,
Mm-hmm.
the thought of, well, I thought I knew you. I can relate to that a bit. And it's not lost on me, because you and I talked
Mm-hmm.
briefly about this before we started the podcast. It's not lost on me that we're two white dudes sitting here talking about this. It's not
Right.
lost on me at all. That being said, there's a difference between getting to your point about having a message here. There's a difference between there are some films out there that pander for a certain subject matter so they can get that hashtag, and there's intelligent movies like this in like 2021 that actually
Mm-hmm.
have a legitimate message to send and have solid ground to stand on. And I just wanted to
All right.
point that out because I feel like a lot of that gets lost in translation, especially when people just aren't open to opinions that aren't the ones they hold already.
Right.
They aren't open to learning. I think that's I'm here on a grandstanding here and just whatever, but I think that's important to acknowledge that there is a message in this movie. Then it's very prevalent in today's society, if
Mm-hmm.
not more so.
Right. And even the director Rose stated that the movie he wanted it to be very racially motivated, but he also wanted it to be poverty motivated. He wanted it to hit multiple spectrums.
Right.
And he did just that. You had this English director doing an American film and did it so well.
Yes. Well, with that said,
Yep.
now the real Candyman appears.
Yep.
We get a set of feet, and I would say of the three movies that this is my favorite Candyman attire. By the way, with the checkered pants.
Right.
So we see that in the feet. We see the long coat with the brown frills on it.
So, and also getting back really quick, getting back to more film related, two things. One, if you ever notice, you never hear Candyman's feet. You never hear his footsteps. Hence, going to his mental state of Virginia Madsen, as well as his spiritual ghost aesthetic aspect. Two, to the director did not like female characters screaming in the film. So instead of having Virginia Madsen scream or freak out when she saw him, he actually brought in a hypnotist
Mm-hmm.
and hypnotized Virginia Madsen and would have keywords that would put her in a trance state, which is how they got her to have such a natural reaction whenever Candyman was around.
Yeah, that's kind of scary to me. Could you imagine being on a film to where okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
so here's the thing, Tony, you're gonna have to have a mouthful of bees. Virginia, you're gonna have to let us hypnotize you. So we're all good here, right?
Right.
Like, how do you talk people into that? Well,
Well,
other than Tony Todd got paid like $1,000 for every bee sting, so
yeah, and it was 23 bee stings in
yeah,
the first film.
that's a nice
So
bonus.
that
I mean, he had
was
to get stung 23 times. So anyway, he's walking towards Helen. We have Tony Todd's voiceover calling her name, and it is just so unsettling, so eerie, but
mhm,
also kind of romantic at the same time.
right.
She sees him at the end of the other end of the garage. He says he came for her. We got a flash of the graffiti that she was taking pictures of, and she stumbles. She asks if she knows him. He tells her no, but she's doubted him, and he tells her that there's no need to leave yet. He says he was obliged to come since she didn't believe the stories, and this is the first time we hear the infamous "Be My Victim." Candyman
Which
says,
actually,
"Go ahead."
that line actually is in that "Be My Victim" actually comes from the short story as well. That wasn't just for the film.
Yes, I have not read it. I have the books of blood. I have tons of books that I just buy and don't read, but yes, it was in the short story. Candyman, awesome monologue here. He says he's the writing on the wall, the whisper in the classroom. Allergies. I am so sorry. And without these things, he's nothing. So now he must shed innocent blood. Come with me. Then we cut to Helen, covered in blood, in Anne Marie's bathroom. We don't know it's Anne Marie's bathroom yet, but she's on the floor in the bathroom. She opens the door. There's the severed head of the dog. She can hear Anne Marie screaming. She picks up the cleaver. Why, I don't know. And finds her screaming over her baby's crib. The crib is covered in blood and empty. The two get into a fight. Anne Marie wants to know where her baby is. Helen winds up cleaving her on the arm. The police arrive while Helen is on top of her with the cleaver raised. I just want to point out there's some parallels here
Mm-hmm.
between this and the 2021 film.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of it has to do with the time periods in which they take place and the message that it's sending, especially with respect to the political climates. But I thought it was, especially with the scene in particular, that it was interesting that while they don't open fire on Helen, who is
Mm,
brandishing a weapon above
right.
Anne Marie, and spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen either one of these movies, I guess. When the police bust in on Brianna holding Anthony, who's injured and probably bleeding out in the 2021 movie, they open fire on him immediately.
Yep.
So I think that was done um, purposefully in the 2021 version. I think it's very intelligent. Um,
Right.
we cut
So,
to a
so
distraught. Good.
real quick, there were two things that bullet points I wanted to say, but
Sure.
we kind of just kept rolling. So you made the comment where he states, "I'm the writing on the wall, the whisper in the classroom. Without these things, I am nothing."
Mm-hmm.
Was actually a play on the original lines from the short story, which was, "I am a rumor. It's a blessed condition. Believe me, to live in people's dreams, to be whispered on street corners, but not have to be."
Yeah,
So he,
he actually says almost an exact line later in the movie as well.
mhm. And then also there's a point when that going back to the bathroom scene when she's talking to the boy about Candyman not being real, and she compares him to the likes of Dracula and Frankenstein. There was a point to that is that Dracula and Frankenstein are both based on loosely based on real life accounts of Vlad Tepes, and they're made up stories that have kernels of historical truth, which hence Candyman is a fictional story but has historical prevalence to the Cabrini Green area. I thought that was another thing, like the little things in this movie that are just so smart. You just hear her telling a little boy, trying to comfort him, make him feel better, but there was actual meaning behind that line.
Right. That's another thing that is just so intelligent about stories like this is it it makes for great storytelling when it could literally happen to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously you can't become a floating hook-handed ghost that we're aware of at
You
least.
can't. Since
That
when?
we're aware of.
Oh, okay.
But all the things that got him to that point
Mm.
can and have happened to people.
Oh yeah.
So, um, getting back to the film, we cut to a distraught Helen. She's covered in blood. She's being strip searched by a female officer. I'm not sure why. I don't know if I just missed that, but she's being strip searched. Helen wants to shower and she wants to talk to Detective Valente, who's played by Gilbert Lewis, and he was in Cheers. That's important because he is not the only Cheers alumni in this movie.
So I got two things on that strip scene. One is personal, and one is an actual factoid. So when Helen's stripping in front of the policewoman, Virginia Madsen suggested her lifelong best friend, Rusty Swimmer, as the part she felt more comfortable stripping in front of another person that she knew. And two, that's also a famous line from our old Monster Mania days when you used to tell Megan to,
Oh, we're not going there.
"Oh, come on."
Oh, we're not going there, pal. Uh, that is where we. Okay, so. No, I'm not even gonna tell that story. That one stays in the box for later. We're not going there. um, everybody's gonna think it's weird now. I don't care. So,
That's fine.
so eventually she does talk to Detective Valento, and she's told she's under arrest and she's read her rights. Valento's really pissed here and asks if she wants her lawyer. She asks for a phone call. She calls Trevor, who doesn't answer. It's 3 a.m. He's probably banging Stacy somewhere. Helen is in her cell. She's staring at the toilet, which is, if I ever go to prison, I'm not going to just stare at the toilet. I feel like that's weird and really unsanitary, or any toilet for that matter. Uh, she gets flashes of the graffiti and baby Anthony, Candyman, and Anne Marie. Trevor finally shows up and he bails her out. The front of the police station is, full of reporters and whatnot, and she's walking the car, the typical, OJ trial kind of, media bullshit. Back in her apartment, the attorney says that they haven't charged her because they think they'll find a body, which means they're going for murder one. Helen says she doesn't know what happened. She just woke up covered in blood. Cut to the bathtub. Trevor asks if he can get her anything, kisses her. He says that he has to go to the campus / probably fuck Stacy, but doesn't want to leave her alone. Helen asks where he was last night. He lies and says he was there asleep, and then he leaves.
I wish
Helen
I could
goes
get
to the
some
kitchen
sleep.
for a drink and a smoke, which great times minus the smoking thing. She loads the film from her photos onto a projector, and she goes through them. Also, things that we don't do anymore. I mean, she would have never run out of film today because she'd had an iPhone.
Unless she got the cheap one, then she just ran out of space on the memory.
Well, that's why you get the cloud, bro.
Well,
So she stops on the Candyman graffiti face photo. And again, on her taking a selfie in the mirror. That is still a thing today.
oh, very much so. Clean your mirrors for the selfies.
Right?
I'm sorry seeing all those dots and dirt.
She notices a silhouette behind her. She puts it into focus, and it's the Candyman. From there, she goes to the bathroom for something and looks around. We get a cool jump scare here with Candyman's hooked arm coming through the mirror here. And I'm going to take this one if you don't mind. Something very cool about this is Virginia Madsen did not know that this was coming. So her reaction to Candyman's arm coming through is a legit reaction. They did not tell her that this was happening in this scene.
I actually didn't have that one, but I do have something on the hook hand, though.
Oh.
So they actually commissioned the hook to be made by a local blacksmith who was more than happy to oblige and make the money until he found out that the film was actually being produced by Clive Barker, and the story was based on Clive Barker, which in turn he was familiar with the Hellraiser films, and as a devout Christian, refused to make the hook.
Huh. Well, fuck getting paid, am I right? So yeah, she runs into the hallway. Is that where we're at here? Yeah, so she runs into the hallway where she has what the hell happened to my notes here? Oh, yeah, so she runs in the hallway. She sees Candyman at the end of the hall. Says, "Be my victim." She runs back to her apartment. He's there as well. He tells her he has baby Anthony and he wants to take her to where he will die in her place. Tells her that her disbelief destroyed the faith in his congregation and now he must kill her. Which I'm starting to wonder if the writers of Freddy vs. Jason watched this movie to figure out what Freddy's character was.
Probably. There's a lot of parallels there.
Really enjoy the line, "Come with me and be immortal." The only way it could be cooler is if right after he says that, Queen kicks in with the Highlander theme.
Right. But to go back before we hurt our horror cred, the whole Freddy being forgotten, that comes from the first film. So, you know, I'm just saying.
It was just something that popped into my head because, well, yes, it comes from the first film. It's just really heavy-handed about.
Oh yeah. Well, and then with the popularity of Freddy versus Jason, they actually wanted to make a Candyman versus a Leprechaun.
Yeah, Tony Todd put that shit to bed real fucking quick.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he said he refused to be a part of that.
I couldn't tell. It looks like he cut her ear. Was it her ear at this part? Part. Jesus.
Side of her face, ear-ish.
Why the ear, man? So Bernadette's at the door. Helen's not really screaming. She's just like, "Bernadette, go!" So she really can't hear. And then she finally gets out a scream. "Bernadette, go!" So Bernadette does the complete opposite, enters, and she sees the Candyman, who then kills her. So I'm wondering, did she say Candyman in the mirror one more time between now and the beginning of the movie?
It's a good question.
How else would she see the Candyman? She's only said it 4 times. 4.
Well, I mean, at this point, there's a line later in the film where it was always you. So was it really the Candyman that killed Bernadette, or was it Virginia Madsen's character?
Oh, see, that's a different way of looking at that. We'll get there. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. We'll have to discuss that point when we get there. So yeah. Trevor returns home, finds Helen on the floor covered in blood, holding a knife, and Bernadette dead. We cut to Helen cuffed in bed under police supervision. She runs into the living room. No one stops her. Where everybody's just kind of fucking sitting around the corpse of Bernadette having a little chit chat. What? I mean, the gore effects on Bernadette are top notch.
Yeah, and I think it was probably the main reason for that whole scene versus.
But could you imagine, like, oh, we'll just leave the body here. Let's just fucking sit around, have a cup of Joe, and talk about what happened.
Yeah, and just let the person who we think is a suspect just walk in the room. But then again, cops do weird shit. Like when my car got hit back in September, and they came, knocked on my door, and brought me out. They let the guy that hit my car just walk up to me and start talking to me. The dude was on drugs, drunk, and got arrested.
Maybe they knew he
But
was just sorry.
so they,
Wanted
they
to
do some weird things
apologize.
sometimes. They do some weird things sometimes.
Speaking of weird things that cops do, Valento then says, take her outside. So why the hell was she handcuffed in bed to begin with?
She should have been in the car already. So
Yeah. Um, so we cut to a montage. It's gonna be a montage of
yes,
Helen being taken to the institution with an awesome narration by Tony Todd and the brilliant score by Philip Glass. Tony
yes,
Todd's narration says, why do you want to live? If you would learn just a little from me, you would not beg to live. I am rumor. It is a blessed condition, believe me, to be whispered about at the street corner, to live in other people's dreams, but not to have to be. Do you understand? And that's the line you were alluding to from The
yep,
Forbidden earlier. Um,
cool.
Clive Barker's awesome.
Mm.
Got anything for that, or should I continue?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. So for me, I feel like that line really sums up the legend of the Candyman. In
Mm.
in my research for Candyman, I saw a lot of people asking, why does Candyman make it to look like other people did the killings? The answer is that line. And again, in Candyman 2021, further solidified this. Candyman
Right,
is an idea, a myth, a legend. If people believe the Candyman is a tangible, real person, he ceases to be.
mm. Right,
He needs to be the writing on the wall, again with
right,
graffiti, which is another parallel that I just made now live with you. The writing on the wall, the graffiti, sweets to the sweets. It's
right.
it's Candyman.
Exactly. And it goes back to him saying to Virginia Madsen, it was always you. So basically alluding to you were the one physically doing the killings. I was the one steering the wheel,
Yeah. So
you know?
they get her to the institution, and I'm like, my first thought is, why didn't they take her out of the bloody clothes? They strap her to the bed. She screams they can't leave her there because she can't defend herself. Candyman appears above her. This scene is awesome, by the way. The
Mm.
Candyman, Tony Todd floating above her. Helen's losing her shit. She's screaming at everyone. He's under the bed. Um, Candyman asks for a kiss, and then my note here is, fuck me. Philip Glass's score is absolutely awesome.
Like,
So we cut to the derelict apartment in Cabrini Green. Baby Anthony is crying. Candyman comforts him with sweets. I couldn't tell what was on his finger. Was it honey or was it blood?
I thought it was honey, but I'd have to rewatch.
Yeah, I couldn't. Like I went back and looked at it 12 times. I couldn't make out what it was. I mean, it would make sense to be honey, right?
Right.
So we cut back to Helen. She's strapped at the table. She wants to speak to her husband. She wants to know where she's going. The orderly, who by the way was Wyatt's dad in Weird Science, and was
Oh, nice.
also in Cheers,
That's funny.
tells her that they're going to Disneyland. They take her to see Dr. Burke, who was also in Cheers. Helen wants to speak to Trevor and ask if she's been committed and questions the restraints. She finds out that she's been there for a month. Has basically been comatose the whole time.
Right.
She asks for her attorney and finds out that Burke is actually working for her attorney. He tells her that she's being charged with first-degree murder. He asks what happened to her apartment. She doesn't answer. He plays security footage of her screaming about him being under the bed from her first day there. Helen can't believe that the flying man with the hook on his hand isn't showing up in the video. She says she's not capable of killing Bernadette. She says she can prove it by calling Candyman, and I gotta wonder what
Yep.
exactly the fuck this is going to prove.
There's no mirror that we know of in that room.
Yeah, there is actually.
Oh, well, then
Yeah,
it
so she
works
looks
then.
in the mirror and she says Candyman 5 times. Now we're over 4. So collectively, between her and Bernadette, they said Candyman 14 times at this point.
Well, they hit the
On
13
film.
originally planned.
Right,
Right.
but
They hit the 13 originally planned then.
well, yeah, but that gives us 1 killing. you know.
Being funny.
Anyway,
So,
so by my math, all she really had to do, if we assume that Bernadette did not say it another time, all Helen had to do was say it once in the mirror to hit the 5 total. But she said it 5, so now we got 4 of them laying out there in the universe. So if somebody looks in the mirror and says Candyman 1 time, they're fucked.
you're, you're going way too far into that rabbit hole. Oh, Lordy.
Anyway, Candyman
But,
appears and kills Dr. Burke. This time not from groin to gullet, more like from asshole to neck.
Yeah,
Um,
I do have something good on that one though.
Shoot, brother.
Uh, Out of everything in this film, that was the one thing the MPAA had an issue with was the original murder of the doctor. They actually had to have that recut, and initially it was only able to be viewed in its original state, in the 18 plus rated UK cut. It's now obviously available in any of the uncut versions that are released on DVD, Blu-ray, et cetera, et cetera. But that was one that it mostly just cut to her reactions because apparently it was just that brutal. So that was
It's
kind of cool.
funny that you bring that up because I was actually researching a bit of that too. Um, at that time period for horror movies, it's weird that it played out that way because it was usually the reverse, where
Mm-hmm.
the American version of movies were a little more lenient with the gore, and the British versions were getting hit hard with the censorship. So that actually was
Right.
not the case for the 18 plus version in over in the UK. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just weird that it played out that way. Um,
Right.
so where are we at here? So he
One of-
kills Dr. Burke. He cuts open her restraints and he leaves out the window like Batman. Just like straight up, Batman Begins, same scene.
Yeah, that was funny.
Helen decides at this point it is a great idea to escape through the window.
I really wasn't sure of that part. Like, she's naked underneath the gown, still has blood on her, and just I'm gonna go out the
We
window.
will
But
fix
then
that
again,
naked part real quick. She
yes,
climbs to the ledge to another window, assaults a nurse, strips the nurse, takes her clothes, and this will definitely help her I'm not crazy defense. I can't see how anybody would think this woman's crazy at this point. So Helen heads home to find that Trevor and Stacy moved in and they're redecorating in the 1 month's time. Stacy immediately bursts into tears when Helen tells her to get out. Trevor appears dressed like Hugh Hefner. Helen says she hates the color scheme and then throws said color scheme paint at the wall, thus helping them redecorate. She blows up on Trevor, who wants to call the hospital. Helen tells Stacy to make the call, who is, by the way, crying like a blithering idiot for reasons I don't understand. Maybe she's just super emotional. It's at this point I realize that Trevor is played by Xander Berkeley, who is John Connor's foster father in Terminator 2, and he's also Gregory in The Walking Dead. Holy shit.
oh, he's been in everything.
It's just,
He's that guy.
yeah, he's got one of those faces, Like, I've seen him
Hmm.
in tons of things. But you don't realize it's him, do you realize it's him?
Exactly.
Helen's having a mild crisis, and Trevor approaches the phone, but Helen catches him and splits. Um, we get this nice water Helen on bridge montage with a nice piece from Philip Glass again, and Candyman talking about his desire for her. We're nearing the end of the motion picture here. Helen's back at Cabrini Green. She's going back to the derelict apartment. There's candles set up and lit in the apartment, as well as a meat hook hanging on a chain. Now, this is just a random meat hook. This isn't Candyman, so it's just a random ass meat
Hmm.
hook. She takes the
Leatherface.
hook.
It was going to be. He was going to have a cameo.
What's up, bud?
Leatherface was going to have a cameo.
I would watch that over Candyman versus Leprechaun. Uh, she takes the hook. She climbs up into another apartment building that was in one of her visions. She finds the mural of the Candyman legend and turns around to see Candyman taking a nap. Killers get
You
tired
don't
too.
even
What are you
sleep
gonna
once in a
do?
while. Exactly. I was
Um,
jealous of that scene. I wish I could nap.
right, same. I mean, even if they are supernatural entities, they still need sleep. She then stabs him with a meat hook as if that would do anything. Candyman has tears in his eyes, I've noticed, which is very subtle. It's
Mm.
very subtle and nuanced to the place towards the romance between these two characters that we're not quite sure is a romance, but we're gonna find out here momentarily. Um, he asks her to surrender to him. I really have to point out that I appreciate the lighting effects when Helen goes into the trance.
Hmm.
It's a softer, more surreal lighting, so
Right.
that's super cool. Helen and Candyman have a great conversation about what she's afraid of. The pain or what lies beyond, both. The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. We go further into the Candyman mythos here as he explains that how their deaths will give them something to remember. Come with me and be immortal. Cut to this awesome shot of the bees coming out of Candyman's mouth and chest, and I'm sure you have something about their little
Yep.
their romance here.
Yep. So a few things. One, uh, Candyman, Jesus. Tony Todd, Virginia Madsen, as I stated, I think I said this earlier in the thing. They actually took ballroom dancing and fencing classes to help them with their chemistry, with their ability to flow with each other. Between that and the hypnosis with Virginia Madsen, and then the bees. So the funny thing about the bees, as I stated earlier too, is that they were all 12-year-old bred bees for these scenes. So if they did sting, the sting wasn't nearly as bad or potent. But Virginia Madsen was actually allergic to bees. And she brought it up to the director, which the director said, "No, you're not. You're just afraid of them." And she goes, "No, I'm allergic." So they went to UCLA, I think it was. Don't quote me on that specific one. And had her tested. And she was mostly allergic to wasps, but still allergic to bees, which in turn he said, "You'll be fine. Actors always want to get a paycheck. You'll just basically do it." And I'm sitting here going, try that in today. Yeah, that wouldn't fly.
Could you imagine
But
telling somebody you have a medical condition? They're like, no, you're wrong.
no, work does that all the time though. But it took a half hour for all the bees to get into Tony Todd's mouth. He actually basically tranced out. It was the only way that he could sit and deal with it. He actually placed dental dam in his mouth so the bees wouldn't go down his throat. And then for the chest piece, where was it? I had something on the chest piece, and I lost it. But basically, the chess piece took an insane amount of time. The chess piece actually was separate. They had to put it on him with the bees already on him. And basically, the bee wrangler told him and Virginia Madsen not to freak out, not to swat, not to get anxious, because that would potentially harm the bees and or make them sting more. So they had to be very, very careful. And the shots were done very quick, very short bursts. And it took almost 45 minutes to get all the bees off of them at the end of the scene. And they had to use that little bee vacuum that I was talking about that just slowly sucked them in.
So they told the lady with the allergy to bees to be careful as to not hurt the bees.
Basically.
Okay. So like I said, we get the come with me and be immortal. Cut to the bees coming out of his mouth, the awesome chest gag. And then there's that bee kiss. Everyone's covered in bees. Cut to baby Anthony. Quote, "You are mine now. It's time for a new miracle." And Candyman takes baby Anthony away, which, again...
It's great that that's foreshadowing without foreshadowing.
Right,
they had no idea.
It didn't exist yet. And guys, we're talking about 2021. Spoilers again. They had no way of knowing that was going to be where the story went. And I'm so happy that it did go there. That's incredible. Let's see. Helen wakes up. She's swatting away nothing because we can't hurt the bees.
No,
not at all. And she finds the meat hook. She sees the mural again. This time it says, "It was always you, Helen," across it. And she discovers herself in the mural. And this is where the timeless romance comes from. Again, parallels to Dracula.
Yeah. It actually was stated that there were exact parallels to Dracula from Bram Stoker's, that was meant and also noticed even back then. So that was kind of cool.
Could we by chance, because we haven't said it yet, could we call it an homage?
Yes. I thought I did say homage earlier.
Did you?
But the word was already used. You said meta, I thought I said homage.
So we checked meta and we checked homage off the list?
Yes.
I think that's our two main gags. Okay. So she exits and finds the bonfire unlit. She hears baby Anthony crying inside. She digs through the bonfire to find him. Jake hears this and he sees the hook going inside the bonfire. He just sees the hook through the window. And he says he's here. He and some others from Cabrini come out to light the fire while Helen's crawling through it to find baby Anthony. The music really complements the scene here. It's a more subdued piece from the score, especially when you consider that people are basically inside of a raging inferno and it should be really tense. But Philip Glass just complements it with this really subdued piece of music. The residents of Cabrini Green are coming out to the bonfire. Candyman appears and holds Helen and the baby Anthony in place. Jake lights the fire, and the people of Cabrini are chanting "burn." Now, before we move on, did you want to talk about the, because we kind of just passed over it, "It was always you, Helen," part of this? Because you brought up an interesting point. So when I read that on the wall, and with the revelation of again, once you watch the sequels, you know it was the family bloodline, but that's not here in this movie.
Right.
That the woman looked like Helen, the one that Daniel Robitaille, the Candyman, fell in love with. So that's how I took that. But you have an interesting take on it.
I mean, again, it's up for interpretation. I think it might even be both. I took it very in your face of it was always you, that Candyman was a manifestation that forced her to do the killings for him. Hence, you said he can't be known that he's there. So he uses vessels to do it for him. And those vessels become just as infamous as he does. Hence, her being in the murals, her not jumping too forward, but being the one that shows up in the mirror when her name gets chanted. She becomes part of the mythos. But at the same time, like you said with Daniel Robitaille in the sequels, that it also looks kind of like her. So it could be that ever loving or that ever ongoing love story like Bram Stoker's Dracula mixed with the straightforward, it was always you. And I got something else too. So the whole thing with the bonfire, that was actually ripped straight from the original Forbidden, because over in London, the bonfire is actually part of a traditional what they call the Guy Fawkes Night Celebration. So that was how the story I haven't read the story, must have played out as well. So they kind of shoehorned that into the film, which even a few of the sources that I had read even said it kind of didn't make sense for the bonfire. It just kind of was there. It was like, this is a thing, just go with it. But over in London, it was actually part of a festival. So it made more sense to actually have the bonfire there.
Hmm. Getting back to your take on it was Helen the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because you sit and think about it in every scene that, well, you know what? Not every scene. I was going to say in every scene that Candyman murders someone, she's caught brandishing a weapon.
Right.
But she's actually not, because when Dr. Burke gets killed.
That's the only one that's kind of hard to explain. But again, there's certain things you have to just suspend belief.
I
She
suppose
really
it's
didn't
open
have
to
any weapons.
Suppose it's open
Yeah.
to interpretation.
Because clearly, in the doctor's office like that, especially with a psycho patient, they're going to have cameras. So, now I'm thinking too far into it, but are you really going to have Candyman killing this guy? No, you're going to see Virginia Madsen doing. Makes sense.
Back to the film. Helen
Yes.
asks Candyman to let her go. He tells her he can't and that they're already dead. They'll never be separated again. Helen sees Anne-Marie through all of the junk when she's peering out. She looks at the baby and lights Candyman on fire with, it looked like a flaming stake to the heart. Further parallels with Dracula.
Right.
She begins to crawl towards an opening with the baby, and the fire collapses. Helen's on fire. Candyman's on fire. Everything's on fire. Helen crawls out, still on fire. The residents put her out while Candyman is screaming, "Come back." She gives the baby to Anne-Marie. Her hair is completely burned off. The bonfire collapses on the Candyman, and we see a burning corpse in the center. And it's a happy ending for everybody.
Yay.
And then we cut to Helen's funeral. Trevor and Stacy, they go to the funeral. That's very sweet of them. There were only like 4 people here. Then all of Cabrini Green show out for this. Anne-Marie looks like she's about to fuck Trevor up, honestly. She doesn't even notice that, but she's just got like this sense about her, like, that's that dude. She looks like she's about to whoop his ass. Jack throws Candyman's hook into her grave like some little psycho. That's a strange thing. And it wasn't like the meat hook. It was the Candyman's hook. So then that comes into just Candyman's hands. Well, where did he get this? I don't know. Maybe it's just meant to be symbolism.
What was the symbology of it?
Thank you. Symbolism. What is the symbolism? All of a sudden, Trevor's at home, distraught. He's completely distraught about losing his wife that he was completely fucking around on. Stacy's asking him some bullshit that I actually don't care about, and neither does he. And apparently neither does she, because she goes to the kitchen and she's pissed. Trevor flashbacks to how awesome of a wife Helen was, and he starts crying. Stacy wants help making dinner. He sucks and says later or something. She's mad. He's crying in the mirror some more. Where was this love through the whole movie is my question. He says, "Oh, Helen." And he's like, lamenting losing her. He does it 4 more times. and I think we know where this is going. Helen
Yep.
appears behind him and kills him. Stacy finds him and screams like an absolute maniac. And I'm pretty sure she's holding a knife as well,
Yes.
which,
Right. And so the cycle starts over.
yeah. And this is the end. My last note here is Philip Glass's score fucking rolls.
Well, and I want to add in there. I watched it on Shutter, and I was looking at the reviews, and someone's review was nothing about the movie. It was Trevor is the worst. Even his girlfriend was pissed off at him by the end,
Yeah. Yeah, he's a
and
total
it's just
dickhead.
like,
Yeah, absolutely, total dickhead. He's a smug prick. You get that from the very first scene that he's in. But I think, obviously
mhm.
he's meant to be. You're not supposed to like Trevor.
Yeah, but it's always nice to have some redeeming qualities for people because two-dimensional versus three-dimensional characters. But yeah, they just made him to be an
Yeah, we didn't do
awful
that with Trevor.
person.
He's a prick.
No,
That's his character arc. His character arc is a straight line. He's just a dickhead. So,
right.
so what are your thoughts on Candyman, man?
I absolutely love it. My biggest complaint, but I also think it's a product of the time, is just it's a slow burn, and if you're not sitting in the right mindset, it can be a little boring at times.
Right.
But that is not discounting the impact and the greatness of the movie. It's kind of like The Exorcist. I am terrified and absolutely love The Exorcist. The only movie that I can honestly say ever scared me. But if you are tired or you're not in the mood to watch it, you're going to fall asleep. And I kind of feel that way with the way the pacing is in this. Let me rephrase you because even you called me out on that. It's not the pacing; it's the tone, the mood, and
Yeah.
the way the movie moves. Again, you don't see the monster until 44 minutes in, which is brilliant. But also, if you're looking just for something to throw on in the background, this isn't the movie for you. This is something that you sit down and you digest and you really enjoy. And I think that's the power of why it's such a classic.
I would I would say that this is cinema.
Mhm.
Um, this is cinema. This is not your run of the mill horror movie. Um, it
Exactly.
has a lot to say, and it says it expertly. I would say this is getting to
Mhm.
your point. It's not something you just put on in the background. You you have to want to watch Candyman. You can't just put it on because you're bored.
Right.
You can't just find it on TV and jump in. Honestly, I feel like you got to watch it start to finish. That's the difference between films like this and the Friday the 13th of the world. That's not just
Right.
Friday the 13th. I love Friday the 13th. Um, but yeah, I would say that this is more cinema, and because it is the horror genre, I don't think up until recently it was as appreciated as it should have been. It is a slow
Right.
burn, but intentionally so, and I think it needs
Mhm.
to be.
Oh yeah. It's funny that you say it's not appreciated. I can agree and disagree with that because I didn't really take a lot of notes on it because I didn't think it'd be too pertinent. But the film falls on a lot of like top 20, top 100, top 50 must sees, horror, slasher, blah, blah, blah. And it usually falls within the top 5 to 10 because, as you said, I feel it's definitely more appreciated now than it was. But even back then, there was a lot of appreciation in a cult way, like a cult following way.
Of the two popular Clive Barker, and I don't say franchises because let's not talk about sequels right now at least. um, I would say I prefer Candyman to Hellraiser,
I can see that.
but they both have that thing, and I think this is a reflection of also Clive Barker's writings. Hellraiser's a slow burn too.
Hmm.
Again, not something you put on in the background. You put Hellraiser 3 on in the background
Right.
because it's not good. It's fun. It's not good. Um, but yeah, it's a getting to a point with Candyman and Clive Barker. This is a little nugget that I thought was interesting. As we get ready to wrap up here, the sequel for Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh, was originally firstly it was going to be a prequel, but then there was the idea of doing Candyman 2 Midnight Meat Train based on the Clive Barker story Midnight Meat Train.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, that did not happen, obviously. So I would say, let's get to the ratings here. I
Hmm.
would give Candyman probably. This isn't because I dislike anything about it. It's just not my favorite movie.
Hmm.
Um, Probably 20 out of 23 bee stings.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'd probably, if I was, since you kind of pulled that one, I'd probably do like a 8.75 out of 10.
Okay, okay,
You know,
which is right
again,
about eight
yeah.
8 4/5 bee stings out of 10.
But no, it's one that when I get in the mood to watch it, I sit and I enjoy it and I love it and I feel I walk away with something. But it's not one that I'm going to just sit down and watch all the time. You know, it would be a hard thing to just, hey, let's throw it on. Let's throw it on. No, you do that like you said with Hellraiser 3, Freddy vs. Jason, uh, just something random. Like you're not going to put Midsummer on in the background. You know,
Right.
it's got that impactfulness that you just have to sit and really take in. So,
And another thing that I think is very important about Candyman, um, it's timeless.
mhm,
The legend itself, just like the Candyman mythos
right.
in the film, is timeless. It is applicable to many eras, unfortunately, many eras in
Mhm,
history,
right.
especially today. Um,
And I think that's what the DaCosta film really kind of jumped on was showing that Candyman isn't just Robitaille. It's anyone in that mindset, anyone in that tragedy, and hence Helen becomes part of the mythos. You know, the Candyman in the new film was a completely different person. You know, it makes it broader. You know, Robitaille may have been the original, may not have been, but it's it's the state of being that really is what it is. I love that.
yeah. The takeaway is that the Candyman mythos is it's bigger than the character. It
Hmm.
The Candyman is a victim as much as he is a monster in
Hmm.
these films. And again, timeless, ageless,
Yeah,
timeless. Very, very important, I believe, very important movie in cinema, especially in the horror genre.
right.
Well, with that said, this was our first episode back. Um,
Yes.
ran about as long as the movie almost.
Oh, Jesus Christ! I didn't realize it's been that
Yeah,
long.
we're at a buck 27 right now.
All
Um,
right, that's just too much of my face on camera.
right. So I agree. I agree. So with that said, guys, Apple, iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, Stitcher, those platforms. You can find us on YouTube. Please hit the little bell icon, like and subscribe, comment. Leave us a 5 star, please. Any kind of rating is helpful, preferably a 5 star on the podcasting platforms. Our Twitters and our Instagrams are all over this screen right now on YouTube. But if you want to follow us on Twitter, it's at Monstercast. On Instagram, it's at Manmade Monstercast. I am Rob138. This is my partner in crime over there
Papa
because I'm pointing
Stank.
in the wrong direction. Papa Stank. Got anything you want to say?
Thank you all for listening. Thanks for sticking through it because this was a little bit longer than I actually thought it was going to end up being, but it's worth it. It's a film that you got to watch, and I'm glad we took our time. For those of you that may have tuned out early, I think you missed some good stuff. I think there's a lot of good facts on here, and really looking forward to the next one. Hopefully, it'll be sooner than later.
Yes. We love you guys. Thank you very much. We will catch you
Peace.
all on the flip side.